I am a product of the fact that these machines were forgotten about, and I got to rediscover them. And it almost had to come from this place of total naivete. Nobody had ever told me this is how it goes. It was more just throwing everything at the wall and just seeing what worked and didn't work. That's a fun, rare, exciting moment to feel like you're building this thing that you haven't seen out in the world already. Fort Lonesome is a chain stitch embroidery business in Austin, Texas that specializes in custom Western wear. I was a pastry chef for many years, and then when my first child was born, I didn't want to go back to those hours. So I started making vintage Western wear inspired baby clothes. As that business started to grow and evolve into more of a business, the creative part of building the pieces was starting to take a back seat to a lot of the process involved in what it actually looks like to run a clothing company. I was looking to find my way back to the creative process of designing. At about the same time was when my first chain stitch embroidery machine showed up in my life. I purchased my first chain stitch embroidery machine from a friend who lived here locally. She had had it for some years and was unable to figure out how to consistently keep it stitching. It was around 2005, and I was unable to find a lot of information about how to keep the machine working. I started blogging to see if anybody would respond from the ether somehow. This guy in Indianapolis, who I had never met, reached out. He was also interested in sewing machines. He was able to pull in some of these folks who had been working on machines for years. One guy in particular was a costumer who worked at an opera house and started to kind of build a handbook for people in his costume shop. That handbook then allowed us to keep these machines running more consistently. Once I was able to work on the machine without just relentlessly having to go in and troubleshoot, it was a really magical moment because I realized that there was sort of a painterly quality to it. I don't claim to have discovered chain stitch embroidery by a long shot, but I think that there is something sort of interesting in the fact that I wasn't trained on the machine by somebody who had a technique. I was trained in oil painting, and I was approaching this medium from the perspective of an oil painter. And so I kept trying to get the threads to do what I was accustomed to paint being able to do. And what that ended up leading to was that we were able to sort of develop a technique that, as far as we knew, hadn't really been developed before. If you look at vintage Western wear and a lot of the suits that were heavily embellished by people like Nudie or Rodeo Ben or Manuel, there's sort of a more graphic application of embroidery, which does kind of make sense because layering a lot of embroidery is challenging. I was so frustrated by the limited palette that I had. Even though there's a lot of great thread colors, I really wanted to kind of create these more organic, natural landscape types of images. This is a jacket that I stitched up around 2013. I was eager to try to blend colors and find new tones and textures. I would lay down a color and then lay down another color on top of that until I got to a point where the threads all started breaking because it was so thick. It was the first of this technique that we've since kind of developed into being our signature. It felt like it was time to kind of start fresh. So we rebranded, and it just took off like a rocket. People were so excited to see these machines functioning again. I already had some eyes on what I was doing because of the work that I had done with Matthew McConaughey, Richard Linklater, and then of course there was Jenny Lewis, Nikki Lane, people like that who were kind of early adopters. We were working with Levi's. It was a very intense time of growth. I knew I needed somebody coming in a little bit more consistently, and Austin is full of people looking for interesting things to do.
I didn't chain stitch or anything when I started here. Kathie taught me. The first project she put me on, the request was a pigeon flying through a post-apocalyptic sky carrying a piece of cheese pizza, and I was like, fuck, yes. When I was introduced to this sort of work, I was so used to that kind of cowboy aesthetic, but to see louder colors, louder suit designs, that immediately drew my attention to it.
I was so burnt out on my previous job, and my friend was doing bookkeeping here, and Kathie was saying that she needed to have more help in the tailoring and sewing department. And so the stars aligned, and I'm never leaving.
I had grown up around a lot of people who were involved in rodeo. I didn't really understand that it was chain stitch embroidery. It wasn't until I had met Kathie that I saw the machines, and she was able to teach us all how to use them.
Everybody else was more coming from printmaking and painting and drawing and just curious what it would feel like to get on a machine and use that same skill set in this particular paradigm. It just kind of happened like that. Like, oh, you want to come give it a try? All right, you want a few hours? I don't know how many hours there was going to be. And nobody seemed to really care too much. And then all of a sudden it was everybody's full-time job. When a client is onboarded into our world, we are asking them to interact with us on almost every single level. It all begins with a consultation. We'll pick out the visual imagery that will make a strong statement. We'll do some drawings, sketches. While that's going on, Becca and Lauren are aggregating measurements. Pattern gets made, pieces are cut, embroidery is executed. The pieces then go back to the tailors who apply any rhinestones or any extra pieces that need to go on prior to the building of the actual suit. Make sure it all fits, adjustments are made, and it's done.
So this is actually our client book. It has all of our clients' measurements in it, including my mom's. One day she'll get her suit. Goes from shirts to suits, dresses, jumpsuits. There's even a remake of a T-Rex suit in here somewhere. Fabric swatches. With this suit right now we're working on here in the shop, I actually made a pattern piece to go for the back yoke, and that is actually this right here. Welcome to my TV show, y'all.
There's a certain special feeling that you get whenever a garment is built for your body with imagery that is specific and important to you. Regardless of what we make, we're slowing down manufacturing. We've taken slow fashion to an extreme where we're adorning things with hours and hours and hours of love and labor. It was probably about 200 hours maybe on this suit or so, just embroidery, and then that's before it's handed over to Becca, our tailor.
When I'm making garments, I think about the longevity of something. We're not just making it to be worn once. We put a lot of work into making sure that the garment is built to last.
We're all trying to slow down and make things that have meaning and stay connected to life and each other.
We can't do it fast. We can't mass produce. What we do inherently lends itself to encouraging people to take sustainability seriously in what they wear.
Do you ever feel like, oh, we've done everything we can with these machines?
No, for sure not. I mean, for myself, I've only been doing it 8 years, but I feel like I'm always learning something new. The evolution of any art form is exciting. People were like, this is what Western wear looks like. And we were like, okay, or it could look super surrealist or super realistic. We can do whatever we want.
Right now, we're trying to play into making certain elements of Western garments in our own take and making them more non-traditional, making them more wild, making the shapes less expected.
Working together has been an accelerator of being able to just continue to evolve. I don't see any end to the up-leveling that we can continue to do. It's just a moving, evolving, organic, collective process.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like and subscribe to stay up to date on all of our latest videos.